Yes, Mr. Rabbit.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. May I now call Hanan Wahabi, please?
Thank you.
I swear by Allah.
I swear by Allah.
That the evidence I shall give.
The evidence I shall give.
Shall be the truth.
Shall be the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
And nothing but the truth.
And nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Wahabi. Do sit down and make yourself comfortable. Can I say I'm sorry that we weren't able to take your evidence last week. As you know, there was a last-minute problem.
Yes.
And we had to put you off, and I'm glad at least we've been able to fit you in today. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Rabbit.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you give the inquiry your full name, please?
My name is Hanan Wahabi.
Mrs. Wahabi, the first thing to do is to echo the Chairman's thanks to you for coming to give evidence today. Your willingness to continue to help the inquiry is very, very much appreciated. As I hope you already know, the majority of my questions this afternoon will focus on the night of the fire itself. And I appreciate that that is difficult. So if at any time you need a break, all you need to do is to just let me know, or the Chairman, and we'll stop.
Okay.
I'm going to try and keep the questions short and simple.
Okay.
If sometimes that doesn't actually happen, but if I ask you a question that you don't understand, then please tell me and I'll ask it in a different way.
Okay.
What we need to do, first of all, is just formally put your statements to the inquiry into the record, all right? And can I have Mrs. Wahabi's first statement, please, which is IWS 6074, please. It's going to come up in sometimes on that, comes up on that small screen that's on the witness desk. If you need a paper copy, that bundle that's in front of you will have one in it.
Thank you.
But can I take you, please, to the last page of the statement?
Yes.
Which is page 21. For the record, Mrs. Wahabi, you've signed and dated every single page of the statement, but can we can see that there's, the rubric, I believe that the content of this witness statement is true, and under that there is a signature. Can you confirm that that is your signature?
Yes, it is.
And we see that that's dated the 18th of April 2018. There are two exhibits that go with the statement. One is at page 22 of the same reference, and the other one is at page 23. The first exhibit is a floor plan of your brother, Abdul Aziz El Wahabi's flat, and the second one's a floor plan of your own home.
Yes.
We'll come to those in a moment.
Okay.
Have you had an opportunity to read this statement recently?
Yes, I have.
And can you confirm that the contents of the statement are true?
Yes, I can.
You've also more recently made a supplementary statement.
Yes, I did.
And that needs to go into the record as well. Could we have, please, page 1 of reference IWS 401146. And then if we go to the last page of that, which is page 10. Again, every page has been signed and dated, but can you confirm that under the line, I believe the facts stated in this statement are true, that that is your signature?
Yes.
And we see it's dated the 22nd of October 2018. Again, in relation to that supplementary statement, have you had an opportunity to go through it recently?
I have, yes, I have.
And can you confirm that the contents of that statement are true?
Yes, I can.
Thank you very much. Just for you, Mrs. Wahabi, and in fact for others who may in due course want me to ask a question, you do not wish to be shown any images, photographic images, but you're content to see floor plans, aren't you?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Can I just begin with some background questions, if I may? In June 2017, your family home was at flat 66 on the 9th floor of Grenfell Tower. Is that right?
That's correct.
And when did you first move into that flat?
In October 2001.
And in June 2017, who was living in the flat with you?
Myself, my 2 children and their father.
And your brother, Abdulaziz, lived in flat 1A2 on the 21st floor?
Yes, he did.
And he lived there with his wife and his 3 children, is that
Yes.
right? And is it also right that in terms of your more extended family, your mother lived nearby and you also had siblings living on the Lancaster West Estate?
That's correct.
Can I just show you your floor plan, which is IWS 7423. Now, can you confirm that your flat was originally a 2-bedroom flat, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And that was the same with your brother's flat, wasn't it?
Yes, that's correct.
But you both, in due course, decided to add a 3rd bedroom.
We did, yes.
If we look at your plan, so this is the layout of your flat,
Yes.
it seems to show, if I've understood it properly, that the living room had a door on it.
Yes, it did.
So is that right? It just had a door on it,
Just had a door, yeah. Door on it.
which opened and.
Opened, and yes, it did, yeah.
And in terms of what you had between kitchen and living room, if you wanted to go from living room into kitchen, could you access it directly?
I didn't have the sliding doors that everybody else had in the tower block. I had 2 doors. However, I had a couch, sofa in front of it, so we didn't access the kitchen via that way.
I see. So you'd have to go out into the hallway and round the corner.
Yes.
I follow. Thank you. Can I then take you, please, to your witness statement, the first one, and it's page 2. Let's look at paragraph 6.
Okay.
The part of this paragraph I'd like to draw your attention to, Mrs. Wahabi, is
Yes.
that sentence where you say that the only signs you remember seeing were put in near the lifts after the refurbishment.
Yes.
Appreciate, I don't want to show you an image, but what kind of signs were these?
That's the stay put policy. But as I've actually come to inquiry a few times and listened to other people, and I know that Shah showed you one that was there many years ago. And on reflection, I remember that one as well when we first moved in.
Okay, well, can I take that in stages then?
Yes.
So let's look at the one that was there
Yes.
after the refurbishment. So
Yes.
was it a sort of permanent fixture by the lifts?
Yes, it was.
Right.
Yes.
And do you remember seeing a sign on your floor?
On my floor and my brother's floor.
And what about on the ground floor?
I can't remember.
And before I go on to ask you about that sign,
Yes.
you mentioned a sign that Shah had
Yes.
produced, and is that Shahid Ahmed?
Yes.
So tell us about that sign.
So that sign, when I first moved in, was opposite the lifts. Opposite the lifts, you had the floor number. My floor number was originally 6, and my brother's was 18. Just underneath that, you had that sign that Shah showed you.
Can you
And that
remember
basically says not to use the lifts in the event of a fire.
You say in this paragraph those signs instructed us to stay in our flats if there was a fire elsewhere in the building.
Yes.
So before June 2017, was the phrase "stay put" something that was in your mind?
It was something that was in my mind, yes.
And was that your understanding of what you should do if there was a
That
fire
was
in
my
the
understanding
tower?
of what I should do for 2 reasons. 1, because of that sign, and 2, because I was previously present during the last fire that happened on my floor.
And what sort of information did you? Well, first of all, let's take it later. Can you remember when that fire was?
I guessed 2010.
And you say that what did you learn from that fire?
During that fire, my son was at my brother's flat on the then 18th floor, and I had my daughter with me, who was just over 1. Their father was also with me in the flat when we learned that there was a fire on our floor. Being a mum, I knew I couldn't leave without my son. So whilst their dad remained on the then 6th floor to support the neighbours and help them get out, I ran up the flights of stairs all the way to the 18th floor with my daughter in my hands. And I went to my brother's flat. He wasn't there, he was at work, but his wife and his children were there. We did call 999, and when we called, that's the advice we were given, to stay put, because it wasn't, because I was now on the 18th floor, it wasn't, the fly wasn't there. So they said that we should stay put.
Fine, thank you. If we look at that last sentence in that paragraph, see what you say is, I never gave any thought to how we would be alerted if there was a fire elsewhere in the building, or whether there was a communal fire alarm. Now, I've read that that you never gave any thought to whether there was a communal fire alarm system.
Yes.
Can you clarify what you mean by this?
So what I mean is I didn't really give any thought that, for example, if the fire, as it did, began on the 4th floor, that we'd be alerted through a communal firing system on the landings, for example.
So that was never your expectation, was it?
No, not when no.
If we go now forward in your statement, please, and can we look at paragraphs 15 and 16, which span pages 4 and 5 of the statement? Thank you. In paragraphs 15 and 16, Mrs. Wahabi,
Yes.
you're discussing the front door
Yes.
of your flat. And you describe that your front door was replaced.
Yes, it was. Yes.
And in paragraph 16, you say this about the door. There were 3 hinges on the door, and from the 3rd, there was a pole that connected the door to the wall, which was meant to make the door close automatically. Not long after they installed the door, the automatic closing mechanism broke, and the door refused to close at all. Can you help us with, and what you say is that you complained and someone came out to address it, but they removed the pole entirely rather than fixing it, so your door never closed automatically.
That is correct, yes.
Can you just help us with, you've described 3 hinges. The hinge that had the pole on it,
Was
which
the middle hinge.
was the middle hinge.
Yeah.
And you say that the pole connected the door to the wall. Can you
I
just-
meant to the door frame. So, yeah.
see? So the pole led from the door to the door frame.
To the door frame, yes, that's correct.
And can you remember when this happened?
So when they were installed, which I think was before the refurbishment, I think maybe 2012, I'm not sure exactly the date, when they were installed, not long after this happened. That's when this happened. It wasn't not long after the doors were changed.
And did you know what the mechanism was for?
I didn't know what the mechanism was for initially, and the reason why I called was because the front door wouldn't close at all. So as soon as that mechanism broke, the front door just wouldn't close at all. So the front door was left slightly ajar. I called KCTMO, who initially refused to come round until I told them my front door is not closing at all. And they eventually sent someone around as an emergency call out. I think they come out within 4 hours. And you just got to sit and wait. And when they came, they tried to fix it, and the way they fixed it was to actually take that, it's like a long pole that literally goes through the whole door. That's what they took out.
And were you there when this work was done on your front door?
I was there, yes.
And did the person doing it explain to you what they were doing?
No.
And what difference did you notice in your door afterwards, other than that it didn't close automatically?
The door was much lighter. It was much lighter. And like I said, it didn't close automatically. Yeah.
And did you, after this, did you, did the person tell you that they would be back to replace the mechanism, or?
Yes, they said they would be back.
And what happened? Did anybody, well, first of all, did anybody come back at
No.
any time?
No
So-
one came back.
So was the door still in that state in June 2017?
Yes, it was. As was my brother's.
Right. Can I ask
Yeah.
you about your
Yes.
brothers in a moment? I
That's fine, yes.
One more question about your door.
Yeah, that's fine.
Did you chase it up with anybody?
I did. I called KCTMO. No one came.
You mentioned your brother's door.
Yes.
Just tell us what the problem was with his flat door.
He had the same problem, it was the middle hinge. Same problem, same space. That
And the same outcome?
his door did close, because mine, like I said, it didn't close at all, but it just kind of just broke. So they called them, and the same thing happened. They just took it out, and then it's no longer closed automatically.
So in June 2017, your brother's front door was one that didn't close automatically.
Yes, that's correct.
And your brother's a few floors above you.
Yes.
How often did you visit his flat?
Regularly, minimum twice a week.
If we look at the bottom of paragraph 16, you say about the front door that it was only ever left open if you, and that's a reference to your son that's been redacted, was talking with his friends on the landing,
Yes.
or when I was having tea on the landing with a neighbour.
Yes.
Otherwise, we kept it closed.
Yes.
Does that mean, the reference to having tea, does that mean that sometimes you'd sit or stand out on the landing?
Yes, we would. My neighbour and I, Natalie, who left not long before the fire, we used to sit stand on the landing with a cup of tea and just have a chat, as you do with your neighbours.
And when you did that, what was the environment like on the landing?
So Natalie had children and so did I. We'd leave our front doors open. Natalie's door did close, actually. But she did have her door replaced after the first fire, and that's why mine wasn't replaced after the first fire, hers was. And the children used to just go inside each other's flats, and that's why I could keep mine open.
But did you ever find the temperature on the landing to be uncomfortable?
No. No.
I'm going to show you now a plan.
Okay.
And it's one that we've seen before. So can we have, please, MET 3012593, page 12, please. I think you may be familiar with this, Mrs. Wahabi, but
Yes.
it's a plan we've shown other witnesses, but it's a layout of the fourth floor, but it mirrors what we would find as you go further up the tower.
Yes.
So this would be what you'd find if we went to your floor.
Yes.
Perhaps if we could just expand the central middle part where it says communal hall. Do you see there, you've got the communal hall appears in the middle there, and
Yes.
you've got the lifts, but at the top of the picture and at the bottom, can you see the
vents.
bits marked smoked vents?
Yes.
Do you see that?
Yes.
Do you remember, and this is about your floor, but do you remember seeing vents at either end of the communal?
Yes, I do.
And were those there before the refurbishment? Do you remember seeing?
Yes, they were.
Did you ever hear any noise from those
Can I
vents?
just, during the
Yes.
refurbishment, they did do something. I'm not sure what they did, but I know that they did something, some change within those vents. I'm not sure what it was. But I remember Linda Prentice, who was from Ryden, informing me of that.
That something was going to be done to them?
Yes, with the vents. So, but I'm not sure what it was.
So after the refurbishment, what did you think those vents were for?
Well, like I said, when there was the first fire, I ran up to the 18th floor. I did see smoke coming up through the vents, so I thought maybe it would help in future and take it out. But I'm not sure 100% what it would do. That was just me guessing.
So, going back to that a bit, you ran up, obviously, from your floor up to the 18th.
Yes,
As it then was.
as it then was. Yes.
You say you saw smoke coming through the vents. On which floor did you see that?
On the 18th floor, because I ran from, so the fire was on my floor, the then 6th. By the time I'd ran up to the 18th, it was coming up the vents.
And but taking you now to post the refurbishment,
Yes,
did you ever hear any noise from those vents?
I did, yes.
And what kind of noise did you hear?
I mean, I can't really describe it. I know that I've heard it being compared to a Hoover, and I'd say yes. Compared to a Hoover, yes.
By using the Hoover
Yes.
as the comparator, they've got variable speeds. Is it a
Okay,
Hoover
yes.
full on or halfway or?
I would say there are times when it was halfway and there were times when it was full on. Yes.
But audible on both occasions?
Yes.
You've told us you would have tea on the landing
Yes.
with Natalie.
Yes.
Was Natalie still living in her flat after the refurbishment?
Yes, she was.
And when you were having tea on the landing and
Yes.
the doors were open and your kids were running around,
Yes.
did you ever feel the movement of air on the landing?
No. Is this before the refurb? or
After the
refurb?
refurbishment?
No, I wouldn't say so. No.
You told us you'd visit your brother regularly.
Yes, I did.
And after the refurbishment, he's on the 21st floor.
Yes.
Did you ever notice anything about the vents on the 21st floor?
They were noisier than mine. Mine were.
So again, using our Hoover comparator,
Yes.
which setting would you put them on?
The highest.
The highest.
Yes.
And
this wasn't constant. Now and again you'd hear them. It wasn't constantly noisy, but now and again it would be noisy. Yeah.
were there particular times of the day when you'd hear the noise?
Not necessarily.
But particular
Not
times of the year?
I work full time, so it would be in the evening for me or the weekends. Yeah.
And what about particular times of the year?
I couldn't comment on that. I'm not sure.
Thank you. Can I again take you now back to your statement, and I want to go to page 5 of the statement and look at paragraph 17, please. The point that you make in this paragraph is that after the refurbishment, it's something you've told us already, is that the floors were renumbered.
Yes, they were.
And so you went up to, you became floor 9.
I did, yes.
How was the floor number marked on your floor?
It was stenciled. Mine was changed from 6 to 9.
And where was the stencil?
It was where the original 6 was on the stairs. It was just painted over. Not the whole wall was painted, just the part of where the number was. And then they stenciled in black digit 9.
So if someone had decided to take the stairs up to your
So my floor, yes.
before when they reached the stairwell door, they would see
Yes.
on the wall the number 9.
Absolutely, yes.
And how big was the stencil?
I'd say about 15 centimetres in length.
If we go to the next page, please, and can we look at paragraphs 19 to 20? Again, this is a part of your statement, Mr. Wahabi, where you're dealing with the,
Yes.
the refurbishment. But
Yes.
you explain that your windows were replaced
Yes.
and then you had problems. So
Yes.
first question is, were you experiencing problems with your windows in June 2017?
Yes.
And one of the problems you highlight in your statement is the question of a draft.
Yes.
So can I take you back to your plan, please?
Yes.
Same IWS 74, please, paragraph 23, page 23, forgive me. So I think the on the plan, the sort of semicircles denote a
Yes.
window.
Yes, that's correct.
And you've got obviously 3 bedrooms
Yes.
in your property.
Yes.
Can you use that plan to tell us which windows had a draft?
Initially, the drafts were in the bedroom opposite the main door, the middle bedroom, the last bedroom, and the kitchen. I called Ryden, and they came and used mastic to try and seal the holes, as it were. My bedroom got better, but my son's bedroom, which was opposite the front door, and my daughter's bedroom, which is the bedroom that we created, was still quite, weren't sealed appropriately. Yeah.
And what about the kitchen?
The kitchen wasn't great either, but the worst ones were the children's bedrooms.
And any draft problems in the living room?
So my daughter's bedroom was initially part of the living room, so that window.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've got, what you've highlighted in particular is the window in your son's bedroom and the window in your daughter's bedroom. So
Yes.
taking those 2,
Yes.
where would you find the draft coming in?
At the bottom of the window ledge, the bottom, underneath. Yeah.
So is it
So more to the corners, though, to the corners of each.
and underneath the windowsill itself?
Yes, underneath the windowsill itself.
Thank you. Can I now just turn, if I may, to the events of the 13th and 14th of June?
Could I just add something about
Yes.
the windows, if that's
Of course,
okay?
yes, please.
I just wanted to mention that, I mean, if you look at, sorry, that plan again, sorry. If you look at the living room, the living room,
Yes.
on the side, one of the windows, which is on the far right corner, if you're looking at it from there, far right corner, that a window fell off completely, as in it completely fell off, and I contacted Ryden to let them know. It completely came off the hinge, and they came to fix it. It then happened again, and then they taught us how to fix it if it happens again. So it did happen, but my son learnt how to fix it. So whenever it came off the hinges, he learned how to do it himself. I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
And so if we imagine that there's a frame to the window
Yes.
and there's then parts that you could parts of it that you could open.
Yes.
Is it that one part would come off the hinge completely?
Yes,
And so was that still a problem that?
yes, it was.
And you would need your son to be there to
Yes, I would.
to sort
I
it
couldn't
out.
do it myself, no.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Can I?
It's fine.
Are you okay for us to
That's
go now
fine.
to the events of 13th and 14th of June?
Yes.
Well, could I ask then if we go to page 10 of your statement, please?
Yes.
Now, what you set out in these parts, and we pick it up at paragraph 35, but you're explaining that on the evening of the 13th of June, you'd been at home since 7 p.m.
Yes.
And you'd invited friends, I think it's for the iftar meal, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct.
And you say that you broke your fast that evening with your guests and with family.
That is correct, yes.
And then your son left. Was that to go to the mosque?
To go to the mosque to pray the evening prayer, yes.
And then what you continue to say, and it's on, if we go to page 11, is that your guests left not long before midnight, and then your son came home about. You've given the time of 12:38.
I've seen the CCTV. The
yes.
CCTV image shows that 12:38. Yes, I know the time. Yes.
And I think you wanted to make sure he got home before you went to bed.
Yes, I could never sleep unless he was home, and he knew that. So I actually called him to make sure he came home so I could sleep, because I had work the next day. Yeah. So, yeah.
And it was only after he got home that you all then went to bed. Is that right?
That is correct, yeah. Yeah.
Well, if we, with that, if we focus on paragraph 38 and 39, you then say in the statement that you heard Salah call your name, and you remember waking up and smelling smoke and plastic.
Yes.
And you describe it as a very strong, immediate smell.
Yes, that is correct.
Were you still in your bedroom at this time?
I was, yes.
Do you remember if your bedroom door was open?
Yes, it was.
What about the bedroom window?
It may have been slightly ajar. I cannot 100% remember.
If we look at paragraph 38, it could be read that you're describing two distinct smells, the smell of smoke and the smell of plastic.
Yes,
Is that what you meant?
yes. It was like plastic burning. That's what it smelled like. Plastic was literally burning.
Were you aware of any smoke in your bedroom?
No, not at that point, no.
And could you tell where the smoke was coming from?
Not initially.
You've described it to us now as it was
Yes.
like plastic burning.
Yes.
And you've described it in your statement as a very strong, immediate smell.
Yes. Yes.
Can you give us a sense of how powerful that smell was?
It was extremely powerful. As soon as my name was called and I opened my eye, I smelt it straight away, and panic kicked in.
Is it possible for us just to put on one side of the screen paragraphs 39 and 40 of this page, and on the other side of it the plan to Mrs. Wahabi's flat, which is page 23? In paragraphs, you just told us when the panic started to kick in, but in paragraphs 39 and 40, you explained that you ran from your bedroom
Yes, I did.
into the hallway.
Yes.
And then you, your son, and your husband were in the hallway by the bathroom.
Yes, we were standing by the bathroom.
Did Salah tell you why he'd called you?
He thought Zach, my son, had left something cooking in the oven and it had burnt or something had happened. Yeah, that's what he thought happened. And my son thought it was his charger that was burnt in his room. He was awake. He was playing PlayStation in his bedroom.
And was that the kind? We've talked about how powerful the smell was, but was it comparable to the sort of smell of if a charger was burning?
No,
or
way more, way more. My son's bedroom was furthest away from where it was coming up, so and he was his door was closed. My door was open. His bedroom door was closed, so he wouldn't have smelt what I smelt. Yeah.
And just for us, so because obviously names have been redacted on this, your daughter's bedroom is the bedroom closest to the living room, isn't it?
That's correct, yes.
And so, and your son's bedroom is of the three bedrooms is one furthest to the left on this image.
That is correct.
Were the lights on in the hallway at this time?
Yes, they were.
Were there any other lights on elsewhere in your home?
My son's bedroom and the hallway.
And
my bedroom, obviously, at that point.
if you're standing, can you remember where you all were in the hallway?
We were in between the bathroom and the toilet, just there. There's a radiator just there. We were standing there.
And is it right from there, would you be able to get a view into the kitchen?
No.
In paragraph 39, if you I draw your attention to that, you say that you could see smoke coming from the living room area. Was the smoke coming into the hallway?
Yes, it was.
And from where you were standing, which would, I mean, we can see a sort of rectangle with the words hallway on it. Was that the sort of area in which you were standing?
Yes.
From that position, Could you tell how smoke was getting into the living room?
I couldn't tell how it was getting in, no.
And aside from this smoke that you could see coming from the living room area, could you see any smoke elsewhere?
No, it was coming from that position. It was smoke, yeah, and ash.
I think you've described the colour of the smoke that, and you've mentioned ash. Other than that, is there anything else you remember about the smoke?
No.
What about the smell at that time? What were you
I
smelling?
was still smelling the plastic, and the closer I got to it, the stronger the smell became.
And just to give us a sense of how much smoke there may have been, what was your visibility like at this point?
It was like, I could see, but it was like literally like a cloud just above, like the whole ceiling. That's what it was like. I would say 30 centimetres from the ceiling down, I would estimate. But the ash was coming down lower. Yeah,
And was
so
there
you could see.
was these particles of ash were they coming into the hallway where you
At
were?
this point, they were still. At this point, they weren't coming. They were just in the living room, but they were making their way towards the hallway. Yeah.
And how much smoke was there in the hallway at this time?
Not much. Not much in the hallway at this point.
And could you see more smoke in the living room?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, using the plan, one of the things you say in your statement is that the smoke alarms hadn't gone off.
Yes, that's correct.
Where were your smoke alarms located?
One in the kitchen on the ceiling, and one in the hallway on the ceiling where the front door is. If you walked as if you're going towards my son's bedroom, just above. There was one there.
And as far as you were aware, were these working in June 2000?
Yes, they were working. We'd, like I said, my son would cook something and they'd go off.
So in the
Yeah.
past, how easy was it to trigger a smoke
Yes,
alarm?
they easily triggered. They triggered quite easily. Burn toast and they'd trigger.
In paragraph 40, which we still got up, you describe moving into the living room area.
Yes.
And you then say that you could feel heat in the living room and
Yes.
see and smell smoke.
Yes.
And there were small particles of ash blowing in from the living room window, which we'd left slightly ajar.
Yes.
Was that the only window that was open that you remember?
To my knowledge, yes.
Was it usual for you to close the windows in your home?
I normally closed them, and the reason being is that quite often, for some reason, people above would throw things out of the window, like leftover food, and at one point a cigarette butt, and the wind blew it into our flat. So I tended to close the windows, but it was a hot day that day, and we left it slightly ajar. And that's why I say slightly. I didn't like leaving the windows open unless I was sat near it, just in case something came in.
Now, on your plan, your living room would have had 3 windows.
Yes,
Which one was left open or slightly ajar?
the one closest to the kitchen.
Thank you. When you were using that window normally, how would you open it?
You'd pull the handle down and push out.
So it was one that opened outwards like a door.
Yeah.
Could you also, did it work in such a way that you could sort of, it could be a
Actually,
tilt
no,
window
you'd
as well?
pull in. Sorry, I think I had to just visualise that. You pull it in. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
Sorry.
That's probably near windows more than anything. But and could it be opened in any way? Could it be turned into a tilt window? Do you
No.
remember?
Oh, I don't know.
All right. But your memory of it is of a window that
Yeah.
opened inwards.
No, it could. Yes, it could. But I didn't ever use it that way. Yes, it could. I didn't ever use it that way. Yes.
Was that another thing that you'd have to ask your son to do?
Yes. Yeah.
Now, what you say about going into the living room area is that you could feel heat.
Yes.
So can you give us an indication of how hot it was when you went?
It obviously wasn't. It obviously wasn't heat from the weather. You could tell it was heat that wasn't natural. I would say, just trying to compare it to something. Yeah. Like a really hot day, but it was literally, maybe like, you know, like when you open the oven, you're going to take out a cake that you've made, for example, and you feel that heat. It was like that.
Was the heat such that it made you feel uncomfortable at all?
Absolutely.
And you described that there's smoke in that living room area.
Yes.
Did it have any physical effect on you?
I would say it did, but I'm not sure if it was the smoke or the fact that I was panicking and I was literally breathing, hyperventilating. Like a panic attack was coming on. And so I'm not sure whether I was struggling because of my my fear or because of the smoke. So, yeah.
Thank you. And again, what you're describing from the time that you were woken up and now to the living when you're in the living room area, is this smell? And was it the same smell throughout?
Yes.
And it's this burning plastic
Yes.
smell?
Yes.
And how did that change as you got closer to the living room?
It was stronger. Stronger.
Do you remember going to the living room windows at all yourself?
Yes.
And at that time, what could you see from your living room windows?
Initially, when I walked towards the living room window, I still wasn't sure exactly where it was coming from. I went towards the actual window itself that was slightly ajar, and I just kind of pulled it open just to have a peek, to think, you know, what's happening. And at that point, that's when the flames blew up. Yeah. And my face was literally right there.
Can I take that in stages, if I may?
Yes, you can.
One of the things that the answer you just given can help us clear up is a detail in your statement, because in your statement, I think you say you're not sure whether it was you or your son that went to the window.
So we've spoken to. So I did do that, but Zach also went to the window. So we did it separately, because I say I'm 100% I did it. He said, Mum, I'm 100% I did it. So we've both been to the window. Right. We've had a discussion since. Yes.
And so if we look about what you say about the flames, that they shot up on the outside of the building
Yes.
in front of our living room window. So this is, again, just remind us which window we're talking about now?
This is the window closest to the kitchen.
Right. The flames you described as orange red, and then you shut the window. Is that right?
Yeah, I was scared. I closed it.
Did you see the flames spread any further?
They were going up. The flames were going up. They were travelling up the building.
Right, and
On the outside.
Once you shut the window and step back, did they carry on travelling up?
They looked like they were travelling up, yes.
Whilst you're in your living room, did you have any sense of what might be happening in your kitchen?
No, I didn't even think. I didn't think about it while I was in the living room, not until I went into the kitchen.
Can I go then to paragraphs 41 and 42 on page 12 of your statement? This is where there's a discussion with your son and his father about what to do.
Yes.
And you say that Salah was adamant that the procedure was to stay put. Now, you use the word procedure. So what do you think he meant by procedure?
And that's what he said. Well, he maybe it's good to mention that he is actually a school caretaker. So I assume he knew the policy from working in a school, but also obviously with that poster that was on outside the lifts, which we had a discussion about because it wasn't there for a long time before what happened that night. So he said that's what we need to do. We must stay put. That's what we have to do.
What were your thoughts about what to do next?
In all honesty, I was. I say in this that I was really scared. I was really scared, and I was confused. I wasn't sure what to do. I felt like I couldn't make any decisions, and my son took over.
So what made you decide to leave the flat?
My son.
I think you described him there as he was the adult.
He was. He was.
And you described your son going to the front door to look into the lobby.
He did. He did what we should have done, which was he went out and he checked and made sure it was okay and safe for us to leave the building before he came back. And at this point, my daughter was still asleep, so she was unaware of what was going on, although her bedroom was close to the flames at that point. And it was his... All he wanted to do was to save her, make sure she was okay. And that's what he did. He ran to her bedroom and he grabbed her.
But where were you when he went to... Because on the plan, I'll bring it back up if you want to see it, but on the plan, you've been in the living room.
Yeah.
Your son's gone to the front door. Where were you when he went off to do that? Did you?
That's when I believe that's when I checked the kitchen.
Okay. Well, I'll come to the kitchen in a moment. But
okay.
do you remember when your son came back, whether he told you anything about the conditions in the communal lobby?
He just said it was safe to leave. That's all he said.
Well, I'm going to turn now to the kitchen, but Mr. Chairman, I've noticed the time. We're, I think, probably coming up to 45 minutes, and I don't know whether...
You're going to a new subject.
A new subject,
Yeah.
and whether...
Would you
Mrs.
like a
Wahabi
break
might-
at this
Yes, that's
stage?
fine.
Sorry?
Yes, please.
Yes, well then we'll have one, of
Thank
course.
you.
We'll stop now then. I'm going to have to ask you please not to talk to anyone about your evidence
Yes.
while you're out of the room.
Yeah.
We'll start again at 3:10. All right, give you just over 10 minutes.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank you.
and you go to the ushers, that'll be fine. Thank you very much. Right, 3:10 then, please. Right. Would you like to ask the witness to come back, please? Thank you. All right.
Yes,
Ready to
thank
carry
you.
on. All right.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Albert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could we have, please, page 12 of Mrs. Wahabi's first statement and paragraphs 41 and 42, please? Mrs. Wahabi, before the short break, we were, I think, about to move on to what you saw in the kitchen.
Yes,
And if I direct you to paragraph 42,
Yes.
What you're there describing is taking a mobile phone
Yes.
Off the charger,
yes,
and then you say you stayed behind
yes,
to close in your statement it says the windows in
Yes.
the kitchen, which
Yes.
had been open as it was a hot day.
yes,
Um,
yes, yeah.
So, taking that in stages again, I mean, firstly, when you're referring to windows, is that there's one window but different parts to it? Is that right?
There's a window in the kitchen. That's the one I was.
Yeah.
It's the one in the
It's-
kitchen. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And you remember that being left open? Do you-
Yes. Yes. Because I never remember it being left open yet.
What you say is that you could see ash in the kitchen blowing in from the window and
Yes.
settling on the floor,
Yes.
and the smoke was getting thicker.
Yes.
It was still mostly white, but getting a bit greyish.
Yes.
Now, to get into the kitchen, you told us that from you in the arrangement of your home,
Mm-hmm.
because the doors between kitchen and sitting
Yes.
room would have been closed.
Closed. Yeah.
You would have had to walk out of the living room
Yes.
and then
Yes.
through the kitchen via the kitchen door. Is that
Yes,
right?
that's correct. Yes.
And when you went to deal with the kitchen window, where was everyone else?
At that point, I believe that's what Zach had gone. I think already by then. My children had left by then, and their father was still around the hallway and in between kitchen. I'm not sure exactly where he was, to be honest, but around there somewhere. Yeah.
Do you remember him being in the kitchen at the same time as you?
He was behind me. He would have been behind me.
What you've also said is that I could still see ash in the kitchen.
Yes.
Had you seen ash in the kitchen before?
Yes, because I'd been in before, and then I went in again to close the window.
I see. So,
Yes.
so in terms of your moving around,
Yes.
you've gone from bedroom into hallway,
Yes.
then into the living room,
Yes.
then into kitchen,
Yes.
and then
I did kind of a living room, kitchen for a little bit. Yes.
right.
Yes.
So, and so what on your visits to the kitchen, you'd noticed that ash was coming through the.
Yes, because like I said, you thought something was left in the oven, but nothing was left in the oven, and I knew it wasn't coming from there. It wasn't normal.
But could you see smoke coming through the window?
Yes, because also in the kitchen we have the vent, the little vent, so that I assume was coming through there as well.
I'm going to try, without a photograph, to describe your
Sorry.
kitchen window to you. So,
Yeah.
if you imagine that there's two panels to it. On the left, a panel that one could open, and on the right, a smaller panel but with a vent above it.
So we had on the left window that didn't open, on the right window that opened, and just above it was the vent.
So,
But it was to the right. Yeah.
but was it in the window itself, or to the right of the window?
To the right of the window,
So,
I believe. Yeah, sorry.
okay. Thank you. I mean, thank you for trying to be very clear. But you say you assume smoke was coming through that. Do you have a recollection of smoke coming through that vent?
Smoke was coming through the window, so whether it's the vent or the window that was slightly ajar, smoke was coming in.
And you've
and
done
ash.
more than one trip, haven't you, to the kitchen?
Yes.
So on your last trip, that's to close that window,
Yes,
isn't
I hadn't
it?
closed it initially, no. I was still confused as to what was going on.
Had there been a change in the amount of smoke coming into the flat?
Yes, for the living room and kitchen. But like I said, I could still see. I could still see where I was and what was in front of me.
And was it the same smell all the time that you were picking up?
The burning plastic, yes, it was.
Did it get weaker or stronger?
Stronger. It just got stronger.
Now, when you went to close that kitchen window,
Yes.
could you see any flames outside?
Not the kitchen window, no. I didn't. With the other one, I kind of opened it and then it kind of shot up. But with this one, I didn't even, I just did that. So I didn't even look. I was just too busy trying to close it. I didn't even.
Did the handle feel hot to the touch at all?
I don't believe so.
So,
I don't believe so.
at that time, what was the temperature like in the kitchen?
I'd say, just like I said, with regards to an oven, yeah, I would say it was the same.
I'd like, if I may, to show you what we've called, there's a smoke and flame descriptor, which is a diagram. It's not a photograph, but it's a diagram of different levels of smoke. Are you okay looking at that?
Yes.
All right. Could I have, please, INQ 50406, page 2, please? And if we just, Ms. Wahabi, direct your attention towards the graphics on
So sorry, I can't do the flames.
Okay, let's put it away.
Right.
Let's put it
Can we
away.
take that down, please?
Sorry.
All right. Well, I won't.
I'm sorry.
I won't know.
No, that's quite right. I'm
Does
sorry
it
we
come-
showed it.
yeah.
I apologise. I should have asked more clearly.
Sorry, I just thought it was, yeah.
Right.
So, are you okay to continue?
Yeah, I'm
All right.
sorry. Yeah.
Well, let's move on to just back to paragraph 42, if we look at that.
Okay. Okay.
I think on your children
Yes.
had left by now, hadn't
Yes.
they? So it's just you and their father in
And
the
their
house.
father. Yes.
And you say, if you look at the portion of the statement that's on the right-hand side of the screen as we're looking
Yeah.
at it, that he picked up his house keys from the key holder by the front door, slammed the door behind him.
Yeah.
He didn't, and you point out he didn't even take his phone. And just as we left our flat, our smoke alarm went off.
That's correct, yes.
When he slammed the door shut, did he lock the door?
You don't need to lock it. You just close it.
So it automatically closes.
Well, you've got to pull it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
if I was standing outside that door, I couldn't push it open again.
No, no.
And the smoke alarm that you're referring to,
Inside our flat.
yeah, which one was that though?
I'm not sure because it was behind me then. But they tended to go off together. So as soon as one went off, they both went off. Normally if we'd burnt some toast or whatever have you in the kitchen one would stop, but then it would just kind of signal the other one would start as well.
So you've told us about, we've gone through the way you were moving around your flat.
Yes.
And this is the point at which you're leaving.
Yes.
By that time, and by the time the smoke alarm has gone off, how much smoke was there in the flat?
By the
time, so
By the time-
I'm taking you to the time when you're leaving
Yes.
the flat.
Yes.
You've shut the kitchen window.
Yes.
The smoke alarm has gone off.
Yes.
Can you can you estimate how much smoke there was in the flat by this point?
So the living room at this point and the kitchen, it's like you could walk through it. So remember I said before it was just like just at the ceiling. It was all around now in the living room and the kitchen, and the ash and the smoke was all around, and it was coming towards the hallway.
So if you're standing in the hallway looking back into towards the kitchen, if you looked into the kitchen, it would be full of smoke.
Yeah.
With ash as well.
With ash as well.
And then the living room in the same way.
Yes.
And that was progressively moving towards you in the hallway.
Yes, that was coming towards the hallway. Yeah.
By the time you were leaving, was it already in the hallway?
Just at the beginning. So if see where the kitchen door is, just there. It's coming towards the lavatory. But not the whole hallway, just like at the beginning again.
So just as if it's almost coming out of the
Yes.
kitchen.
Yes.
The temperature in the flat at this point, what was it like?
The parts that I said were the hottest were the living room and the kitchen. Everything else seemed fine.
If I take you now to page 13 and paragraph 43. In fact, if we go 43 down to 46, please. So, this is the part of your statement where you deal with your
Yeah.
exit from your flat
Yes.
and from the tower.
Yes.
And you describe leaving your flat with your children's father, and then you say there was a bit of smoke on the ninth floor landing, but not as much as in our flat. Is that, when you say not as much as in our flat,
Yeah.
is that the amount as much as it was at the time that you left in your flat?
Yes, at the time we left my flat, yes.
So you're now in the communal area.
Yes.
What was the visibility like in the
I could see. I could see. Yeah.
So the smoke that you could see, where was it?
Just above.
And were the
It
lights?
wasn't all around everywhere like it was in my flat.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, just the ceiling.
Could you see where it was coming from?
I didn't, in all honesty, I was in such a panic I didn't even look to see where it was coming from.
Were the lights on in that communal
Yes,
area?
they were. Yes, they were.
And the smoke that you encountered in the communal area, can you tell us anything about it? What colour was it by comparison to the smoke in your flat?
It wasn't grey like it was as it was getting darker in my flat. It was quite light coloured. Yeah, it wasn't dramatic. Yeah.
Some witnesses have in statements have compared it to some smoke that they'd encountered to cigarette smoke. Was there more smoke than that?
Yeah,
Or?
I'd say it's cigarette smoke. Yeah, yeah.
And do you remember if it had a smell at all?
I don't remember having a smell on landing. No.
Whilst you were in the communal area, did you see anyone else
No.
on the floor, on the
No.
landing?
No.
Did you hear any noises?
No.
And what was the temperature like in the communal area?
Normal.
Did you hear the vents at all?
I didn't pay attention.
If we look at paragraphs 44 to 45, that's where you describe moving into the stairwell and then using the staircase. Had you used the stairwell before?
Before the refurb, I did. I hardly ever used it because I tended to go. I leave for work really early, pretty early, and I come back pretty late. And I know there were lots of times when the lift wasn't working, but they tend to happen during the school runs or during the day, and I wasn't home then. And there were times when my mum has Parkinson's and dementia, so I'm also a carer. So there are times when I'd sleep at my mum's and I wouldn't be in Grenfell Tower. And so it tended to happen on those days. I'm like, oh, so yeah.
And in terms of the when you got out into the stairwell, you say in paragraph 45 that the lights were on, and I could see where I was going, and I could see smoke, but it wasn't thick and black. The smoke got thicker as I descended, but I could see through it and could always see the steps in front of me. What colour was the smoke that you encountered on the staircase?
Not initially on my floor, but as I descended, I could start seeing the smoke. It wasn't initially on the ninth floor where I was, but as I went down, I could see smoke, and it was getting darker in the fact. So it would be like it was in my flat, but then it was getting worse than what I'd left in my flat. So darker.
When
But
you-
not black like everyone's mentioned, but I could see where I was going. So I just say grayer.
So when you got onto your floor onto the stairwell, was that clear?
That was clear.
Um,
My floor was clear.
but then as you descended, you
Yes.
started, and did it get darker and darker as you went further down?
Yes.
Can you I appreciate it's difficult, but doing the best you can you remember how many flights you went down before you encountered smoke?
I can't. Sorry.
And can you remember where the smoke was at its darkest or most intense?
I'm in sense, obviously, because I went past the floor where the fire had started. So maybe a couple of floors before I got there. 3 floors before I got there. And then, yeah.
And did the smoke that you encountered in the staircase have any particular smell as well?
It was burning, but the smell of burning plastic was more prominent in my flat than it was on the staircase. I could smell burning, but that plastic smell was more prominent within my flat.
In your recollection, is that a smell that you associate with your flat?
Yes. Yes. I associate with my flat, and I also associate with once I'd exited the building.
I drew your attention to it. You say you could feel heat in the stairwell.
Yes.
How did the temperature in the stairwell compare with the temperature in the landing and on your floor?
Oh, hotter. Hotter, yes.
And how did it? You told us about the temperature in your kitchen and your living room.
Yes.
At about the time that you were leaving.
Yes.
How did it compare with that?
It was hotter than that.
And all the way down, you never had any difficulty seeing through the smoke?
No.
Did you have to use anything to cover your mouth with?
I used my headscarf, but I wasn't consistent with it because I was panicking. So I was either holding onto the railing or back up to hold my scarf. So I'd use my headscarf to kind of cover my mouth, really. I didn't take a tea towel or anything like that. I didn't even think about that when I exited.
Now, if we look at 46, you describe seeing firefighters at the door to floor 4, and you say they were holding the door open.
Yes.
And just so that we can be clear, was that where you encountered the thickest smoke?
Yes, that was where I encountered the thickest smoke.
Once you got past floor 4, was there still smoke on the lower floors?
Then it became less and less. It became less.
Can we go to the next page, please, and look at paragraph 47? What you say in paragraph 47 is that by this time my throat was extremely dry and burning from the smoke. Which smoke had caused that effect?
So initially, obviously, it started within my flat. And then once I was going past, descending down towards the 4th floor, it was then, before when you showed that paragraph where I was where there were firefighters holding the door, I waited there for a bit because I couldn't get past the firefighters.
And why couldn't you get past the firefighters?
Because one was holding the door open, so the door to the landing, to the stairs. One was holding it open, and another one had a hose, and he was aiming towards the flames. And he was like on his knees, and his legs were across the small landing on the stair, but on the staircase, not within the landing where the flats are. And so I couldn't get past them. And my concern was that they're going to tell me to go back. And so I stood there for a little while before, as I was trying to calculate. And I was quite lucky in the fact that the firefighter moved his legs slightly where he was trying to aim at the flames. And when he did, there was a bit of space, so I jumped over him. Well, not him completely, but his legs. And that's how I got out.
As you're going down the stairs, and at this point where you pause, were you aware of people above you coming down as well?
No.
Were you aware of anyone else being in the
No.
stairwell at the time?
No.
Other than these firefighters?
No one else.
I appreciate it's difficult to estimate time, but how long do you think it took you to go from your front door to leaving the tower?
I wouldn't say it took me that long. I was in flight or fight, and I was flying. So, yeah, I wouldn't say it was that long.
And apart from what you've described about your throat being dry, did the smoke that you encountered have any other effect on you?
No.
I want to move on now to a different topic, and that's once you've left the tower and it's
Yes.
your contact with your brother and his
Yes.
family. Are you okay for me to ask you some questions about that?
Yes.
And this is obviously, Mrs. Wahabi, once and again, if you ever want a break at any point, just
Yes.
let me know. But you've left the tower, and in your statement, you describe contact between yourself, your brother, and his wife.
Yes.
And those are direct conversations that you had with
Yes,
them,
they are.
aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Can you remember how many times you called your brother's phone?
From my phone, me personally, I would say 4 times. Twice I spoke to him, to my brother, and twice I spoke to my sister-in-law.
Can I take you to part of your statement where you deal with a call?
Yes.
And it's page 15, paragraph 51, please. This is where you call your brother, and you're able to give a time for it in your statement because it's just after your son took a photo on your phone.
Yes.
And the time that you give is in paragraph 50, and it's the photograph was taken at 1:25 a.m.
Yes.
So was this the first time that you spoke to your brother
Yes.
after the fire?
Yes.
After you'd found out about the fire?
Yes.
You say that he was aware of something going on. Did he tell you if he could see any signs of the fire?
No.
Did he tell you where he and the family were in flat 182 at that time?
At that time, they were in between the kitchen and the living room.
You then, and it's also in this paragraph, you describe a second call to your brother, and you've
Yes.
given a time at about 1:30 a.m. Just to help us, how are you estimating the time there?
I'm estimating the time just because I know how long it was when I first made the first call. That's how I estimated it.
So you're taking that call as your benchmark?
Yes, as my benchmark, absolutely.
What your brother told you then was that he couldn't leave
Yes.
because there was too much black smoke,
Yes.
and they couldn't see and they couldn't breathe.
Yes.
So, and you made the point in your statement that it was very different from the smoke that you encountered, wasn't
Absolutely.
it? And that was the description he was giving to you, was it?
Yeah.
Did your brother tell you where he'd encountered this black smoke?
He had come out of the flat and attempted to go down the stairs.
And did he tell you whether the smoke was in the communal area on his floor or whether he got to the stairwell?
He did get to the stairwell. He got to the stairwell, yes. And then he came back. But I believe that the black smoke was both places. Yeah.
Did your brother tell you whether there was any smoke coming into his flat at all?
There wasn't at that point, no.
If we go to page 16 and just look at the top of the page. Can you see, Mrs. Wahabi, just the second sentence? You say, I called my brother's phone back for the 3rd time, and this time your sister-in-law
Yes.
picked up the call.
Yes.
Again, I appreciate time is difficult, but you've used that photo that your son took as the benchmark.
Mm-hmm.
You've been able to say your second call was at 1:30 a.m. or about that.
Yes.
Can you remember how soon after that you then made the 3rd call?
Not long. It would have been about roughly 1:40. Yeah, it wasn't that long at all.
Now, the information you got from your sister-in-law was that the emergency services said they were coming to rescue them.
Yes, and I could hear my brother speaking to the emergency services in the background. Yes.
At that time.
At that time.
And was he then relaying information to your sister-in-law who was all talking to you?
Who was talking to me, yes, that's correct.
So it was in effect a sort of, could it be described as a sort of almost three-way passing of information? So
yeah.
emergency services speaking to your brother,
Yeah.
who's speaking to his wife, who's speaking to you.
Yes.
And so when you say that Fawzia said the emergency services had said they were coming to rescue them, that was what she was getting from Abdulaziz?
She was getting from Abdulaziz. I mean, I could hear him in the background talking. Yeah, so but I know that it wasn't just him that was talking, but the information was being relayed to Fawzia to me.
And did she give you any more information about what else they'd been told?
They had been told to stay put. They were told to stay in the living room. They were then told to move from room to room. They were told to stay low. They were told they were coming to save them.
At that time, and you've very helpfully tried to estimate the time at 1:40, did your sister-in-law tell you anything about the conditions in their flat at that time?
Not on that call. Later on, yes.
Is that in the fourth call?
Yeah, there's another call, yes.
All right. Well, can I take you to, I mean, you just before I take you to that call, but where was, when she was speaking to you, where was your sister-in-law at that time?
I could see her in the window. She was in the living room. She was in the flat 182, so it was the second window along. If I'm facing, I was on the sports centre side, Kensington Leisure Centre. She was the second window along. As I was conversing with her, I could physically see her. And there is a photo that I've given to the police, which is a photo that we've taken of her as she is standing in that window. My nephew, who came on site, took a photo as I was having a conversation with her.
Can I take you just to paragraph 55 of your statement, please? This is the last call that you speak about, and
Yes.
you give a time in that paragraph that it's at 2:15 a.m. How are you able to estimate that time?
I can't remember. I can't remember how I estimated that time. I'm not sure if it was around a photo that was taken, because there were a few photos taken on my phone, including a video recording. It would have been on those times. So that's how I made it. So when I first did this statement, I think I was a bit more stronger in that I could look at images and I could look at photos, especially knowing that they hadn't been found. All I could do was go and stand by that tower. I can't do that now. So I think when I estimated that time, I could look at the photos and I could see what time they were made and what time I gave to the police. I can't do that now, so
Okay.
I can't give you 100%.
No, that's fine. Thank you. And what I think is worth pointing out, of course, is that other members of your family were there with you.
Yes, they were.
And they would have been in contact as well with...
Yes, they were. They were in contact with them as well.
And so, what your sister-in-law picks up and outside, you mentioned your sister Amina's with you.
Yes, she is. She was with me.
And she spoke to Fawzia, didn't she?
Yes. So it was on my phone. I had the phone because I promised them that I would call them when I saw the flames approach their flats. I didn't understand the severity of the black smoke. I didn't understand that. I just thought it was the flames like it was in 2010. I didn't know anything about the chemicals because I could just visually see. So I promised them that I would call them when the flames were approaching their flat because the flames were on my side, on the sixth corner. And so as the flames progressed up to the tower, it did like an upside down L shape and it went across the top. And my brother's on that there, and I promised her that as soon as it's coming, I called her when it was next door, so it would have been flat 181, And then I said, it's coming to 182. So I said, as soon as I call you, you need to get out. And that was my promise to her, which is why I called her. And I was getting a bit panicky. And so my sister Amina, who came to support me at that point, spoke to her, and I could hear the whole conversation about the fact that the fire had now reached their flat. It was in their kitchen. Yeah, at that point.
You say that you said to them to get out.
Yes.
And your sister-in-law said that they were trying.
They were told to stay put.
But did they tell you whether there was anything preventing them from getting out?
The calls, the 999 calls, they were telling them to stay put. That was the only prevention, was them. They did say it was black, and I know that my nephew was scared, my youngest nephew, so they were trying to calm him down because I could hear that. But from my understanding of conversations with them and the family around me that were talking, and I was there live, so I heard them, was that they were told to stay put and they believed they were going to be rescued.
Did they tell you, I mean, you've mentioned some of it in this paragraph, but
Yes.
Did they tell you what the conditions were like in the communal area at this time?
No.
And did they mention anything about the smoke that they were encountering?
Not apart from right at the beginning when I said it was black, yes. But then that was right at the beginning. We talked about the black, it being black, and they couldn't see and they couldn't breathe properly. Yes, they did relay that information to me, but that was outside, not within the flats.
Yes. Right, I follow. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that was that was the information they gave you in the first call to you.
The first call to me directly, and it was the information that was the information they gave me. But then, with regards to the fire, then that was later, fire in the kitchen.
Can I finally just move on to just ask you a question about one last topic, please?
Okay.
How long did you remain outside the tower that night?
All night.
And whilst
All
outside,
day after that.
did you have any contact with anyone from RBKC or the TMO?
RBKC didn't come and find me. RBKC were not there at all. It was my nephew that opened Portobello Rugby Club for us to find refuge.
That was going to be one of my questions because
Yes.
you mentioned the opening of the rugby club. And did you arrange that through your nephew for that to be done?
My nephew, the caretaker of Portobello Rugby Club is an acquaintance of my nephew's, and so he proceeded to knock on the door so that we'd have somewhere to go because we were literally everywhere all over the streets. My daughter at that point had been taken to my sister's house, Amina's house, because she wasn't wearing any shoes and she wasn't dressed appropriately. So my nephew then ran at some point when he realised we're not getting in, we're not getting any help. So he went and knocked on the doors. He initially knocks on the door of somebody who works at RBKC, who directed him to the caretaker, and the caretaker then opened up Portobello Rugby Club for us to have some refuge. But I still didn't go in initially because I needed to find my brother and his family.
Whilst you were outside, I mean, you were a resident of the tower.
Yes,
You'd
I
come
was.
out of the tower.
Yes,
Did anyone ask for your flat number or floor number?
the police.
And how soon after you'd come out of the building did somebody ask you for those details?
I would say maybe an hour, because the police were moving us, and then they realised that some of us were wearing pyjamas, and so that the police took my name and my flat number.
Mr. Chairman, those are all the questions I have for Mr.
Yes.
Wahabi. May I ask for a
We'd like
short
the
break
usual-
just to check if anybody else has supplementary questions
Yes.
that they'd like me
Well,
to put?
Mrs. Wahabi, we'll have a very short break now to give Mr. Rabbit a chance to review
Yes.
his questions and,
Yes.
and any that may be suggested by others. So I'm going to ask you to leave us for 5 minutes. We'll come back at 10 to 4
Okay.
and see if there are any further questions.
Okay.
I have to ask you not to talk to anyone about
That's
your
fine.
evidence while you're out of the room.
That's
Is that
fine.
all right?
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'd like to go with the usher then, please. Right, 10 to 4 then, please. Yes, Mr.
Couple
Rowett.
more matters,
No doubt.
please.
Yes, of course. I think there are a few more questions, but I hope not too many.
That's
Yes,
fine.
Mr. Rowett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mrs. Wahabi, thank you for coming back. I want to pick up two matters that from some of the answers that you've given. Do you remember that you described an earlier fire in the tower,
Yes, I did.
which took you up to what was then the 18th
Yes.
floor to your brother's flat?
Yes,
And you recall that on that occasion you saw smoke coming through the vents?
yes,
And that was on the 18th floor?
yes, I did.
Just so that we can get it very clear, was the smoke coming into the 18th floor lobby?
Yes.
And how much smoke did you see?
No comparison to what happened on the 14th of June. It was very light, very light. Like cigarette smoke, like you said earlier. I'd say like that, cigarette smoke.
Thank you.
And it wasn't all the way up across the ceiling, it was just literally, I could just see it coming up through the vent and it's just beginning to come, but not all the way up the whole
So
ceiling.
you didn't see it spread through the lobby?
I didn't see it
just
spread through the lobby
saw it
because-
coming out of the vent
Yeah,
itself?
because then obviously I went into the flat and remained within. Yes.
Thank you. Second topic is in relation to back to the 14th of June and your dissent, and it may have been me confusing you a little bit, but you remember that you told us that as you descended, the smoke got thicker.
Yes.
On the transcript of today's proceedings, you're recorded saying that the smoke was thickest a few floors above floor 4, which is where you saw the firemen. But you also said that smoke was thickest at floor 4.
I know, what I meant was it was getting thicker above floor 4, but once I got to floor 4, that's when it was the thickest.
Thank you very much for clearing that up.
That's okay.
My last question to you is this, and before I ask it, can I thank you for coming and giving evidence today? We all appreciate that it's a difficult task, and we're very grateful for it. But what I want to do is ask you this. If you put aside what you've put in your statement and your supplementary statement, and put aside the answers that you've given to my questions today, and again, it's taking you back to the night itself, but is there anything else that you saw or heard or smelt on that night that you think it important to draw to the attention of the chairman?
I do have something, I prepared it if that's okay, because I memory loss and I wanted to read it. Is that okay? Just to read?
Yes, of course.
Thank
all
you.
right.
It's not very long, I just made it, worded it big so I could see it. And I've addressed it to you, the chairman. Dear Sir Martin Morbick, I'm normally very quiet and don't like making a fuss. I appreciate this opportunity to have my say and have prepared a statement that I'd like to read. I am here, but my brother and his family are not. I need to be his voice, because I know if it was the other way round, he would be mine. He would fight for me, I know he would. So there are 4 brief points I want to make. The first thing I want to talk about is the previous fire in 2010. As you know, there was a fire which we just talked about on the 30th of April 2010. This fire was on my floor. When I exited my flat in 2010, the flames were quite intense. My son was upstairs playing with his cousin on the 18th floor. So I ran, rather than exit, up the stairs to my brother's flat, carrying my daughter in my arms. And I've already said about what the 999 call said, to stay put. There was some smoke on the upper floors that came through the ventilation system, but it was not black. You could see where you were going, and the fire did not spread. There was limited damage to my own flat on the 6th floor from the 2010 fire, and I did suffer some smoke inhalation, as did others. But there is no comparison with what happened on the 14th of June. What happened that night was very different. I evacuated at 1:21 and called my brother not long after. He said the smoke on the 21st floor was already black and they were struggling to breathe outside the flat. What I want to bring to your attention is that this is a massive change in the behaviour of the fire from the 2010 to the 2017 fire. The refurbishment changed the building and had the fire act differently. There is no question in my mind about that fact. The second issue I want to mention is the lack of help from RBKC or KCTMO on the night. Like I said before, it was my nephew who opened Portobello Rugby Club. They did not help us when we were raising concerns or asking for help before the fire. They did not help us during the refurbishment when we raised our voices and our fears about safety. They did not help us on the night of the fire. I'm asking you, as the chairman of the inquiry, to help us now. There needs to be change. Please help. The third issue I wanted to raise is about call participant status. There are people that are key to this inquiry, especially for phase 2, that have been declined call participant status. If you read my statement, I name a person that was a chairperson of the Grenfell Action Group. He's been declined call participant status. I urge you, Chairman, to please rethink this and have a look at this because he is key to this inquiry. Finally, I need to speak for my brother and his family. There is what happened on the night for us, but there is also what happened on the night for them. I know that you had the 999 call recordings and transcripts. They were given false hope by the LFB operators. They may well have survived if they didn't listen to the stay put advice. I have listened to my brother's calls, and in the background, in one call, where he's waiting to be connected, he says something along the lines of, "We could have gotten out had they not listened to them." I agree with him. But there are also calls we personally made to our families that night and the conversations that we had with them. No transcripts exist for these calls. We also gave them false hope because we wanted to keep them calm. And we'll have to live with that for the rest of our lives. I lied to my 8-year-old nephew on the night because my brother asked me to tell him that it was going to be okay. I have to live for the rest of my life knowing that I lied and I told him it was going to be fine, knowing that it wasn't. I urge you to take these into account of what happened during these calls. There may be no recordings or transcripts, but I know what I heard. I heard fear. I heard parents trying to be strong for their children. Sir Martin, I want to say to you that 72 people died as a result of what happened. None of them had to die. This could have been prevented and should have not happened. Please make sure there is change. When I look back, there are many things that we as the Grenfell community and Grenfell Action Group could have done differently. I cannot change the past, but I can learn and do things differently. It was very upsetting to hear Danny Cotton say that she would have done nothing different on the night. This is like saying that there are no lessons to learn. I know that people tried their best, but mistakes were made. Sir Martin, as we move forward, I implore you to make the case and space for learning and reflection, for ensuring we hear from witnesses what they have learnt. Saying they would do nothing differently cannot be an acceptable response if we are serious about learning. 72 people passed away and we can't bring our loved ones back. The impact that it's had on our families and our community could have been prevented. We can't change that now, but we can change the lives of those we've lost to count, for their deaths not to have been in vain. There has to be change. We have to learn from this. Life will never be the same for us. We may find a new place to live, but it won't be our home. Grenfell was our home. The people who were there were our family. The impact on me and my children, all of those impacted, will last a lifetime.
and I want to know that we will be supported for the rest of our lives. As a result of this inquiry, I want the truth to be found and for change to happen. I finally want to thank all of those people, including the inquiry team, who have and continue to help us. It makes a huge difference, and I can't express my gratitude enough. Words will never be enough, but from my heart, thank you.
Mrs. Wahabi, thank you very much for those powerful and perceptive and, may I say, also generous remarks. I'm very sorry, of course, for the loss of your brother and his family, and that's a loss that can never be repaired, and I understand that. I'm sure there are lessons to be learned, and it's the inquiry's job to identify them and do our best to make sure they're learned and put into effect. So we're very grateful to you for coming to give your evidence.
Thank you.
I've said this to other people, but I'll say it again, it's very important that we understand as much as we can about the conditions in the tower at different times and different places and what was going on more generally. And evidence, your evidence and the evidence of others like you who've come along to tell us that is really essential. So I'm sorry it's been a difficult experience, but you can at least be assured that it's been very helpful. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Right, would you like to go with the usher now? Then?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Rowett.
Chairman, we have a bit of time. If I may, I'd like to use that
Yes.
just to put one statement into the record, if I may.
Yes.
That is the statement of Mrs. Wahabi's husband, Salah ad-Din Chibuni. And the statement is at IWS 50945, please.
Right, thank you.
If we go to page 11 of the statement, we can see, Mr. Chairman, it's dated the 3rd of July 2018. It carries
Yes.
A statement of truth, and it's signed. There is one exhibit which is also part of the statement, which is a floor plan at page 12. And if I could, I'd like to just read a short extract from the statement. As you will have appreciated from Mrs. Wahabi's evidence, her and her family were at home on the night of the fire, and if I can pick it up at paragraph 24, this is Mr. Chibuni's account of the events of the night.
Yes, thank you.
And I preface it with this. You'll remember that Mrs. Wahabi was saying that they wouldn't go to sleep until their son had got back, and that's where we start. According to the CCTV image I've been shown, and names redacted, returned home at 12:38 a.m. Hanan and I went to sleep when he got in. The next thing I remember is waking up and wanting to go to the toilet. I didn't know what time it was. As I walked towards the bathroom, I smelt a strong plastic burning smell. I thought, oh my God, and that's the name of the couple's son, has left something in the cooker, so I didn't go to the toilet. Instead, I went to the kitchen and opened the cooker, but there was nothing in it, and it was switched off. I couldn't find the source of the smell, which was stronger now, in the kitchen than it had been in the hallway. I couldn't tell you if the kitchen was hotter than usual, because I was panicking. I could see light grey smoke in the kitchen. No windows in our flat were open except for our bedroom window. We generally kept the windows closed because people smoke, and we worry about them throwing a lit cigarette down and flame catching the curtain. I heard crackling, like when you burn something. I turned to the left and could see flames coming up behind the kitchen window, like someone was having a bonfire just outside of my window. I wondered if it was fireworks or something, so I opened the kitchen window. Straight away, smoke came in and I felt an immense heat. I closed the window. I did not hear any fire alarms go off. This all happened very quickly, within a few seconds. Then I walked into the living room, confused, and looked out of the window there. I opened the window and leaned forward. I could see flames below our flat on the outside of the building, and I could feel intense heat. The fire looked like it was just a metre or two away. I closed back the window after just a couple of seconds. I immediately went to Hanan and woke her up, telling her there was a fire. Then I went to my son. He was lying down in his bed but was awake. I'm not sure what he was doing, maybe listening to music. I told him there was a fire in the building, but I wasn't sure where. He ran into the living room and opened the window. Immediately, flames shot up outside of the window in front of his face. He closed back the window before the flames entered the flat. Hanan was in the living room too, panicking. I told her to calm down and get her mobile phone, and I got my mobile phone as well. As I've said before, I thought we would be safe in the flat. I thought the fire services would be able to put the fire out and that we would be safe in the flat in the meantime. I told Hanan and my son that we should stay inside the flat. Luckily, they insisted that we get out. In paragraph 29, Mr. Chibuni explains that his son left with his daughter first, his son carrying his daughter, and then he continues. Hanan followed next, carrying her mobile phone and her keys. I left the flat last, closing the door behind me. I also carried my mobile phone and keys. I did not lock the door behind me. It all happened so quickly that I didn't even think to call 999. When I left the flat, the flames were not yet inside it. I don't recall hearing any smoke alarms as we left. I walked slowly as I left the flat. I didn't think the fire was that serious. I thought everything would be okay. I remember seeing light grey smoke on the ninth floor landing, like cigarette smoke. Apart from that, everything looked normal. The front doors of our neighbours were all closed. I didn't see anyone else leaving their flat. I can't recall the landing being unusually hot. I took the stairs down. I know that you must not use the lift during a fire, so I did not consider using it. The door to the stairwell was closed. There was smoke in the stairwell. Again, it was light, like exhaust smoke, pale grey in colour. The lights were on in the stairwell. I went slowly down the stairs. I couldn't see Hanan in front of me. She was gone already. The stairs weren't slippery and did not seem wet. I don't remember seeing hoses in the stairwell. I could smell that burning plastic smell. As I descended, I could hear people speaking, but couldn't tell where the voices were coming from. Around the 6th or 7th floor, I saw a black guy with his daughter. I think he's from Somalia or Sudan. He's a small guy and was wearing glasses. He was carrying his daughter, who I would say was around 3 years old. He asked me what had happened. He looked confused rather than scared. As we spoke, I opened the door onto what I believed was the 6th floor landing. When I opened the door, I saw thick, black smoke. It was impossible to see through it. I closed back the door and I was confused. The guy with his daughter was initially behind me on the stairwell, but then passed me. I said, "Go, I'm going slowly." I was having a little bit of difficulty breathing as I went down the stairs because of the smoke. Every time I breathed, I coughed. The statement concludes, or the part of it that I wish to read, explains that the CCTV images show his son carrying his daughter leaving at 1:19 a.m., Hanan Wahabi leaving at 1:21 a.m., and Mr. Chibuni leaving at 1:22 a.m. And that's where I propose to finish reading from that statement.
Yes. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah,
And we should express our thanks to Mr. Chibuni for taking the trouble to make his statement. And of course, you can assure him that it will form part of the evidence before the inquiry in full and will be taken into account.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman, that's our work for today.
Right.
Tomorrow we are sitting with a witness, and it will be Mr. Millett.
Yes. So we break now and resume tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good. Thank you very much. 10 o'clock tomorrow then, please.